was Full Circle 1980? 80 it was, wasn't it?
1980, yeah. So I'm 45, so 40 years, 4 decades.
Wow. So I guess in the pantheons of how people judge Doctor Who fans, you really do have a place for an opinion, 40 years of experience and what have you.
Hey, look, so I'm never going to be somebody who sits here and says, oh, I've been watching from, for 40 years, and therefore my opinion carries more weight than somebody who started watching at the start of the 2005 show, or even later, and is only now discovering classic things. So I'm never going to sit here and say my opinion is more valid than anybody else. It just means that I've seen an awful lot.
Absolutely. And on my channel, I usually talk a lot about the 1980s Who. Don't worry, I'm not doing that today. But you've been through eras that have been criticised previously. So you've been through the John Nathan Turner run. You've been through probably the worst parts of Moffat run, as a lot of us have as well. And now we're in an era where that criticism has a massive platform, and that criticism has a place to sort of manifest itself. First and foremost, how do you feel about the current era of the show? So we're talking from Jodie's start, Chris Chibnall's start as showrunner.
As you suggested, each era is always going to have its proponents and its detractors, and that's and to a level that's fine. Large sways in the Moffat era just weren't for me. I didn't connect to it. I found, sadly, because I think Matt Smith is great, and I think when they finish Get Hold of Them, hopefully, I think it's going to be immense. But I found large swathes of Matt's era thankfully interesting. But that's just in my opinion, and for many others, it's that is their era, and that is absolutely fine. And really, sort of, Peter sort of really got in the final season of Peter's run. Really enjoyed Peter's final season, and almost sort of despite my age, you sort of got like the stereotype would be, oh hey, a 45-year-old male would not be expected necessarily to like the current era, and I love the current era. I think it's great. I love it. I love its storytelling. I love the different style of storytelling that it's brought, and the show is a show that has to change. It's a 58-year-old show now. It's got to change, and it will always change. So as much as it's a show about time travel, it's a show of its time as well. And that means it isn't going to be for everybody. And if people find themselves not relating to the show anymore, well, hey, that may be because the show isn't actually being made for you at the moment. It's being made for somebody else. So I personally like it. I think Jodie's brilliant. The accusation that she has no range which is very often levelled at me, doesn't exist. Yes, she does the sort of bouncy and enthusiastic side of the Doctor incredibly well, but she's also capable of being real sort of serious actors as well. You only have to look at when she opens the door in the TARDIS and steps out into a mute Gallifrey at the end of Skyfall, and and you sort of look at, she doesn't even have a line there.
She doesn't need one. That entire episode, I think, is an example of, if you weren't convinced about her portrayal of the Doctor, look at that episode and how she reacts to things and how she responds to her world being destroyed. It's perfect. It's perfect.
The other one is the haunting of Diodati, where the whole thing about where she has to basically sort of say to him, this isn't a democracy. It's it's
me at the summit.
It's two structures back, and I'm at the summit, and actually that's sort of her acknowledging that there's real pressure on her there, that to be excellent and to be always have the answers, and she makes what could be characterized as a mistake in that, her actions in that episode to give rise to the sort of rising side of her. But that's not to say that the Doctor never makes mistakes, because the Doctor absolutely makes mistakes
all the time.
Mistakes may not be necessarily as high or as destructive, but I think that's something like the face of evil. So for basically influences an entire civilization, or an entire world, and and that's how the Tesh in the 17 come to be, because he's done this thing and walked off and forgotten about it. You don't even realise he's been there until before first. So the Doctor's not infallible, and that's good to understand sometimes.
So
I love that.
Yeah. Whilst I've got someone here who sat through the 1980s of Doctor Who, I thought I'd see what you think of this idea. I like to see Jodie's run quite parallel to Peter Davison's run in terms of a story arc. I think you've got a Doctor who's very vulnerable, who's surrounding themselves with a lot of companions, and I think that dynamic only really works if that Doctor's vulnerable and does make mistakes. And it's all about the stakes getting higher and the body count getting higher as time goes along. And I really think we're going along that journey now. I don't know how you feel about that.
I think Chris Chibnall's he's clearly just as Moffat and Davies were before him. He's a fan, he sort of grew up in the show, he's a famous Kevin Millcliffe and all of that kind of stuff. So undoubtedly, yes, he's undoubtedly influenced by his era.
Yeah.
As a sort of young man, you've got the whole TARDIS team dynamic. You've got, I tend to agree with you that perhaps a little bit more vulnerable Doctor, that he's finding
in a team, absolutely,
finding itself as it went along. Yeah, and clearly, we've got the sort of talk about that subject later, but we've got the whole timeless child versus Cardinal Master Plan parallel there. So I don't think it's a bad analogy. I think you've got to let. I don't think you can be beholden to the past. I don't think it's a bad parallel as parallels go. So
yeah, absolutely. I think as we go on with this, we are not going to be able to avoid talking about the timeless children. So in a moment, I will ask for opinion on that. But first, when Jodie was cast as the Doctor, I want to know how you felt. Because I've been asking a lot of people this. What was that initial reaction like, and how has that changed over time, if it has at all?
So I recall very well where I was and what I was doing. I was at the British Grand Prix. So the race had just finished, and after the race, usually in the pre-COVID days, there's a after party, and you go and sit on a field of grass that they have, if you like, in the inner loop of the circuit.
Yeah.
Usually abandoned, whatever. And I knew that it was going to be sort of broadcast immediately after the men's Wimbledon final.
Yeah.
So pretty sure I was going to catch the announcement, and it was a case of, can I get a mobile phone signal in the midst of Vile, and there's 140,000. Yeah, and I did, and I saw it, and my initial reaction was I was clearly surprised.
Yeah.
Because I didn't think that, and my initial reaction was, well, after all this speculation, thank God we've grasped the method.
Yeah.
Because that was I was like, and I actually posted, any friends who see this, you can look back, my initial post on Facebook was getting the BBC, because it was like, about time to do something different with it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, we've grasped an effort, and it'll either work or it won't. And unfortunately, the people through it's worked have largely remained the same, and the people through it hasn't, and largely remained the same. That said, I do have a friend who is of a comparable age to me, a little bit older maybe, maybe 3 or 4 years older, who was dead set against it. Nobody in the cosplay community, just an old school Doctor Who fan who was dead set against it.
Yeah.
Posted on Facebook, in very vitriolic terms about it. And I saw him, literally bumped into him about 18 months ago, and he was like, I'm trying.
Yeah.
She's sold me, so yeah.
Absolutely. I like to think, and again, it's on a much bigger scale this time, but every Doctor has that doubt when they're first cast. And I hope this doesn't make anyone feel too old or anything, but I actually don't remember David Tennant getting cast. I don't remember what that response was like. I was watching at the time, but I was too young to be reading the internet and things like that. So I don't remember if there was a particular backlash to go for such a younger, handsomer Doctor.
I think it was that he was so young.
Yeah.
I mean, I was so what I will say is that I've been, like, if you can split it into classic and new.
Yeah.
Classic wise, yes, grew up with Tom and Peter and Silver after that, but my classic Doctor, if you can call it classic, is 8. And absolutely love him. But I never had a New Who Doctor until Newsday.
Yeah.
And she is my New Who Doctor. I never connected with any of them. Probably Chris, I may have done if he'd been here longer.
Yeah.
Some of that is for reasons of sort of identification.
Yeah.
So I grew up 3 miles from where Chris grew up. He's a lot of what he talks about in his autobiography. A little bit older than me, so sort of straddles the generations a little bit. Well, a lot of the things that he talks about in terms of his parents,
you'd have known.
I identify with my grandparents.
Yeah.
So a lot of the stuff that he was trying to bring to the role, probably I would have identified with a lot more if they'd been in the role long.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But I do recall when regenerating, sort of thinking, David was very young, and I wasn't quite sure, that he had the gravitas for it. And like many Doctors, his first episode is, you don't get a true flavour of 10 in that first episode. But I do recall also that when that backlash was even greater when that took place.
Of course, yeah.
People had become very attached to 10, and Matt was an even younger actor, and so there was quite a. I think Matt had quite a job on his hands.
Oh yeah.
I mean, in my view, I don't think the writing ever sort of. I don't think ever allowed him to sort of demonstrate what he was truly capable of in terms of very serious acting.
I'm a big fan of 11 myself, and I think I'm in that same camp as you, that he never ever got the potential fulfilled on screen. Like, you watch his first season and there's a glimpse of this amazing darkness within his Doctor, and then it's never seen again. It's not, you don't see it in series 7, you don't see it in series 6, it's gone.
Yeah.
And that saddens me.
Yeah.
But then if you move back to this, I feel like even going to Capaldi, you get the too old complaints, and that was very prevalent on Twitter at the time. But the backlash against Jodie was immense. I can remember this very vividly, like the day it happened. And then it became a birth of the Not My Doctor Brigade. And it, I don't know if the fandom's ever truly stopped being split from that. And I'd love to know what you think about that.
I've got to be careful.
Yeah.
I don't want to tar everyone with the same brush.
Yeah.
Because it would be very unfair of you to do so. Like I said, there's people. There's a difference between the people who say, "Well, she's not really my Doctor," and the "not my Doctor."
Absolutely.
People. So, if you don't get her and you don't connect with her, there's nothing wrong with that. And I've said, I didn't. I didn't really connect with any of the new Who Doctors properly until there was Jodie. So, and I think a lot of there was definitely the division has become almost a little more stark. It was so at the start, everyone was like, "You haven't seen it. You don't know what she's going to be like. She might be excellent. You're just clearly being sexist."
There's a very big difference. Yeah,
and almost, that division sort of, like I say, become more stark in the sense of, I think there is some people out there who are out and out. The only reason that we don't like her in the role is because she's a woman. Whether that's sexism in some cases it borders on the misogynistic. That is there. There's definitely a coterie of people who are like, but it would be unfair to tarnish everybody with that brush. Absolutely would be. Some people, it's not their era. And that's fine. Whether it's Jodie or whether it's the writing, you've got the whole, it's too political. I've got news for you. That too was always political.
Agreed.
And actually, they're sort of, and not just that. So people saying it's too political and it's too overly preaching and it's too in inverted commas woke. Gentle, so in one of the Paladin stories, Sarah Jane gives Queen Clara an out and out feminist lecture.
Absolutely.
It's up front, it's
right there.
There it is. There's nothing only about being a girl. And and you just like, well, where's the difference between that and 13 telling the fan, hey, you're burning the planet, it's not my planet, it's your planet. Go do something. It's not my planet, it's your planet. Go and do something about it. So, So,
absolutely. And you could point to an awful lot of other examples there as well. So even the 70s, and specifically in the 70s, Doctor Who had a very eco-themed series, I seem to remember, especially during the John Pertwee years. You look at Ace, she's definitely meant to be a punk communist type companion. Maybe it's not as explicitly said as you'd like to think, but and
Ace really comes. Ace goes on a real journey as well.
Yeah.
There's a huge sort of anti-racism story behind Ace as well. So it is there. I think it's Underworld, not the Sunmakers, one of the two, which is basically, with the tower, where with the guy over it. The whole story is an anti-capitalist.
There you go. Yeah.
Basically, so the idea that it was always subtle, it was always no, it wasn't.
No, not in the slightest. Are we just going to forget Capaldi literally said the phrase history was whitewashed like a year before all of this?
Yeah.
That's the most out front. I'm not disagreeing with it, by the way. I think actually most sci-fi, you look at Star Trek, you look at Star Wars, if you want your politics out of your media, then don't watch sci-fi. That's my opinion.
So, it's what sci-fi is for.
Yeah.
You know, sci-fi isn't for, you know, sci-fi is not for spaceships and you know, and space alien worlds. Yes, they are there, and yes, they're interesting, you know, but it is there to hold a mirror up to
society, absolutely.
You know, what is going on this planet at this time. You know, that's what it's there to do, you know. And if you don't like it, don't watch it.
There you go.
You know, go watch Line of Duty or something, you know, not to try Line of Duty, sure it's excellent, you know.
Yeah.
But there it is.
Or you go deeper, you go very, very simply, Daleks are meant to be Nazis, Cybermen are meant to be a totalitarian society, let's say. You look at it's really not.
It's
you
really
know.
Not something.
No.
You know. And the other thing is that, you know, lest we forget, this is, you know, started out as a children's program. This is a family show, which is written to be understood by adults and kids alike.
Yeah.
So so if sometimes it is a little unsuffering the way it does things, that is because there is a new generation watching this that, you know, that certainly in these times of, you know, racism, re-emergent nationalism, rampant xenophobia, you know,
homophobia, of course.
Homophobia, transphobia, then, you know, and the internet, some portions of the internet's obsession with, you know, how can the Doctor change sex is, you know, some of that is definitely some transphobic. You know, I'm not saying it all is.
No.
It all is. Some of it is. You know, every cell in the Doctor's body regenerates.
Yep.
Every cell. You know, this is a 1,000-year-old alien. Who knows how old the Doctor is now? Who, when their body wears out, you know, every cell in their body regenerates. How much of it is a stretch to think that, you know, that we might be thinking about using once in a while?
The only thing I'll ask to you, Ben, and this is purely opinion based, of course. In the narrative, do you feel they should have addressed it more, or are you happy with it just sort of being normalized, if you see what I'm saying?
I think there's a space for both.
Yeah.
You know,
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one. It's they did like begin to, you know, return to it a little bit last season with with the fans sort of going, hang on a minute, you know, we really don't know who she is, and sorry, someone at the door.
Oh, don't worry.
Right, sorry, John. where did you want to go back to?
So we were talking about the narrative side of the Doctor changing, becoming a woman. Yeah.
So, did you begin to sort of return to it a little bit last season? The idea of signposting it a little bit more, the fan working out that we don't really know where she's come from, and both the Master and Jack saying, she needs to be a man or she needs to be male presenting. So they have sort of. So I think it's been handled better last season than it was in the first season. And I think in the first season, it was done. It was deliberately done because it was a jumping on season. But, it was
no, of course.
So have we got the tone right? Probably. I do think there's a definite argument for just sort of normalising it and just saying.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
See, for me, I'd counteract it all to any criticism. Oh, God, sorry.
There's no reason that the Doctor can't do what they've always done.
Yeah.
Just because she happens to be a woman.
Yeah. See, I'd throw it back to this idea, and I feel like Moffat laid a lot of the groundwork for this to be okayed with the fandom, really. If you look at things like the Sister of Khan can literally choose regeneration for people where they say man or woman, right? Where if they can get it down to a science like that, surely there's a genetic code for it anyway. Maybe it just doesn't happen as often as regenerating to a man. I don't know. They'll explain it in the future, I'm sure.
Look, Romana chose her regeneration.
Yes.
So not only did Romana choose what body she wanted, but she chose when she wanted to regenerate as well. Now, we lots of people say, "Oh, it was a throwaway scene." So there's a lot of stuff in Doctor.
It happened.
But, the whole 13 regenerations thing was a throwaway. A throwaway line, originally, and it just. And it wound up finding the show. Until it no longer did. So and look, we could go into all sorts around Gallifreyan biology, or as it happens, non-Gallifreyan biology, or hijacked biology, according to the Chinese children. We can talk about looms and all sorts of things.
Absolutely. The long barrow theory
is complicated.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. The looms is obviously one, but as far as I know, it's never actually been referenced in the show. You might be able to correct me on that.
It has been referenced to Big Finish.
Oh, really?
And it depends on what you were. Canon wants to say. I personally adopt everything in Doctor Who's canon. Canon. You choose the bits of the franchise that you want, and you personally connect them, and that's what you want. Go for it. Just don't expect the next time you happen along to have the same view. And please do not demand that people have the same view as yours.
Exactly.
There are references to these in Big Finish. Not the last. I think it was the first Gallifrey Time Warp box.
Right.
When they mentioned New Forests. So it's like, so he was like, um, when I first listened to that, when they came out, did they just say? Yeah. So yeah, Gallifreyan biology is complicated.
Yeah. And there's no reason why both theories can't be true, by the way. You could say that looms are for the higher breeds of Gallifrey, which they've already said they've got like a class system on Gallifrey. You could always say the looms are designer babies, like what we say in real life, right? About test tube babies, right? You could always draw a parallel with that. You could do it any way you want. I'm sure there are Gallifreyans who are made naturally, and I think that's already been like alluded to anyway.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the original idea of looms was that at a point in Gallifrey's past, they became sterile.
Yeah.
It's truly knows about history of this, but I'm not going to that. But basically, they were cursed to sterility, basically, which meant that they removed genetic material.
Exactly.
So yes, absolutely. You could sort of say, well, did that include the Shubuckans? Was it the Time Lords only?
There you go.
Does the lower strata of Time Lord society have the opportunity to go to the academy? And does that mean there's a certain newer generations of Time Lords that don't have that limitation?
That's exactly right.
Is it a cost of regeneration that you can't reproduce naturally?
That would be interesting.
Speculate, but it's fun to speculate.
Of course.
And I think the thing that people who go, it's this way, it's always been this way, and 50 odd years of the show tell us that it must be this way. I think we're missing out. Because it's fun to speculate. And it's fun to play around with, and say, do like this.
I'll put it like this. I feel like
inspired to write for the show, or write to be finished, or write for books or any other form of media, or just fan fiction. Yeah, it's fun to play around with this stuff.
Exactly. I'll put it like this. There's about 3 or 4 different continuities of Dalek history if you really want to look at it.
Yeah.
And none of them are particularly wrong. That's the thing. You can decide for yourself which do you like the sound of the most. Do you like what Moffat did with the Daleks? No, you don't have to acknowledge it. You don't have to use that idea going forward. The idea of a canon of something.
Because that's what's great about this Cybermen story, because every tale that's told about Cybermen is all true at the same time.
Of course.
And Spare Parts is true, World Enough and Time is true. The Age of Steel stuff is true. So,
of course,
and that's what's good about it. And in a 58-year-old show, writers should have the creative freedom to play around with it.
Remember, I'll always analogize, I guess the word is, with Star Wars. With Star Wars, there are 2 very distinct, different canons. That's going to happen when you make something that's over 50. Well, Star Wars is reaching 50 years, if you see what I'm saying. So, but when you have something running for that long, it's not built to last. Shows like that are not built to last. If if you were to make Lord of the Rings like further now, so if you had made the books in the 30s and 40s and they were going all the way till now, a lot of things would have changed about them, I think. I think it's just natural that things progress and move on to fit the narrative that's going on now. You know, I think there's an awful lot to be said about the idea that not too many shows have a different showrunner every 3 or 4 years as well, if they're going on this long, right? So that idea of canon doesn't really work for Doctor Who. But what I'd like to say is in this debate about what's canon, what's not, you'll be very aware of a book called Longbarrow, and you'll be very aware of a story called The Timeless Children. Now, how do you feel about The Timeless Children itself, and how do you feel about its comparisons to Longbarrow?
There clearly is a comparison, and there's a comparison with the Cardinal Master Plan, which Longbarrow was going to be part of. Yeah. This idea that there was a third figure alongside Rassilon and Omega. So I personally don't have a problem with that idea that that third figure was the Doctor, and that they either got too inconvenient or too powerful, or something along those lines, that that forced the Time Lords to
raise the memories and hide them away, essentially.
Raise memories and all of that kind of stuff, and where Ruth fits into those, I suspect we haven't seen the last of Ruth. She may be a pre-Harlow Doctor. She might be something completely different.
Yeah.
We don't know. Maybe we'll find out in the 60th. So that idea, I don't necessarily really have a problem with. Do I have a problem with the idea that it was Doctor that gifted regeneration to the Time Lords? Don't really have a problem with that either. It's just a bit of card into that, however you want. Is it a little bit of a MacGuffin to have us into a completely different universe? Maybe we'll get a bit more of that in the 60th or at some other point as well. So, and also we don't know when did the Doctors start calling themselves the Doctor.
There you are.
At the point of the memory arranger order. We don't know that yet either. That could make Hartman's Doctor the first Doctor. We don't know yet. I don't have a problem with it. As I said, a bit of a MacGuffin as it currently stands in terms of where she's come from. We might get more, but don't necessarily have a problem with it. Again, Chris Chibnall's a product of his fan upbringing in that respect.
Exactly.
I do like the idea that it sets her free in some ways, because it then sort of goes, well, actually, look, she always had more than 13.
Yeah.
Lives, they just sort of, that was something that, according to the Timeless Children, that was a limit that was given to native born Gallifreyans.
There you go, yeah.
she never had. So yeah, I don't have a problem with it. There's more. The thing could go for another 50 years. Now because
of this decision, yeah.
So yeah, and there is a rich vein of that to be mined now. To say, how much of that backstory, is there going to be? Some of it we may never see on screen. It may be for Big Finish to one that we know that the show runners deliberately leave gaps in the narrative now. Nick Vincent said, he's gone to Stephen Moffat before Christian and that for us, and we go, that there, so that you could plug in, however much story you wanted to put into that. So something you never see played out on screen. It might be the Big Finish to do or books to do or whatever. So I don't think it lessens her in any way. I don't think it necessarily disrespects William Hartnell or any of the actors that have gone before. We've established that there is this line, and that we don't know what went on before it. But that there is a definite line. At which point, I we don't know. Was there something in the Doctor that just said, actually, what? Something in the back of their head and documenting anyway. So, when the northern thing, I know a lot of people go, oh no, there's more missing spaces. No, Philip Finch was very definitely no. Yeah. Those were other doctors that we were,
exactly.
We were suggesting, existed pre-Hartnell. So, other doctors you have not seen. So it doesn't. I don't think it's as much of a break with the past as everybody thinks it is. I've been watching since 1979, 1980. I can remember it. Some people can't.
Exactly that. And again, this won't be the last time that fans complain about a decision. It won't be the last time that they make groundbreaking changes to the continuity. Hell, the Timeless Child will probably be retconned at some point. It will be added to and it'll be changed.
It might be, like I said, it might be added to, it might be changed, it might change protocol, like I said, it might do something with Ruth, we don't know. But I think it's fair. I think it's pretty safe bet that something will be done with it.
Yeah.
And whether that is add to, change, remove, I don't know. I think the idea that that someone's going to come along, or that Chris Chibnall is going to come along in a season's time and just undo it all. I don't think that's going to happen at all. I think we'll find out more. But I don't think he's going to. I don't. He's just going to sort of get me erased now.
There's a lot of creative ways you can go about it, because narratively, we found this information out in the Matrix, and if anything that the Trial of the Time Lord told us is the Matrix can be tampered with. So if they want to go down that route, that's always there. If they want to go down the route that there's even more in the Matrix, maybe the Doctor has to go back again, And see, there's a lot you can add on, there's a lot you can do with it, because we're only given half part of a truth. I'd love to see them go further.
Yeah, and the Masters told us this.
Yeah.
But I think the Master absolutely believes it.
Yeah.
Because look at his visceral reactions.
Exactly.
So, it says, the idea that, that part of her is in him, he says he can't stand that. So,
beautiful.
He mutes his whole planet. Now, look, the Master was never that attached to Gallifrey in the first place. And I'm absolutely willing to see it destroyed if it meant his own survival. That wasn't the deadly assassin, but his reaction is, you all deserve to die, because everything that he built on his life. So.
Exactly. And that's almost more encouraging to me than any of the other season finales. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, we've been given something that could be built on for another decade. I think since the event of the Time War, this is the best narrative thread we've had in the show, for better or worse.
Yeah. And look, the Time War has given, the show a lot to do. It's given the finish a lot to do.
Yeah.
We like the idea of Gallifrey repeatedly being blown up. Not sure. I think, I know why Russell T Davies said, they didn't want the character to hide down and beholden to Gallifrey, but I wonder whether it's caused more problems than it's solved narratively. And this is Christian Bale's time, and almost, given what the timeless children did, Gallifrey almost had to be destroyed.
Yeah, exactly.
Because otherwise, you're always sort of going, well, why can't we just go back to Gallifrey and find out? Why can't we just go back to Gallifrey and find out? Certainly in Chris Eccleston's season, we knew that the Time War had happened, and the Time Wars were no more, supposedly without us. And we were like, what was so cataclysmic that this happened, so it gave that, it gave that air of mystery, but without,
but it also meant that they didn't have to tell stories.
Away from it.
That's exactly it. And again, I feel like that's almost because the expectation now, if they were to do a Gallifrey story today, this is why I think Moffat shied away from it so much. If you were to do a full-on Gallifrey story today, I think the expectation would be way too high. The budget they've got now, what they could do to bring Gallifrey alive, it's almost, you'd have to have a movie budget, I think. Personally, anyway.
Yeah. And look, I'm a big fan of Big Finish's Gallifrey. audio podcast about it, and and for me, being finished in Gallifrey better than the show ever did, or ever could, So I quite like having my Big Finish Gallifrey series where actually that had room to play with Gallifreyan politics and play with the idea of the stuffy, decadent, declining society. Really, all of that you could never have done in the show. Never have done in the show.
Yeah, of course.
So, so actually, why do it in the show?
I think, again, everything you've explained about Gallifrey needs its own series, and it needs its own... You can't have a big character like the Doctor and Gallifrey coexist almost, because there's so much to explore Gallifrey outside of the Doctor. As you know, in that series, there's a lot about Romana, there's a lot about Leela, etc. There's so much more to Gallifrey than just the Doctor.
Just the Doctor. The Doctor ran away from Gallifrey. Why would we want to go? Why would we want to repeatedly go back there with them?
Yeah.
It's yes, sure. Very, very occasionally it's been fun to see that. But every opportunity they get, they can't wait to get away again.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
why would we necessarily want to go back there with them?
And the Doctor's been president before, and that didn't even keep them there. There's a lot of evidence to suggest maybe we don't want to put our character here, and there's a reason for it. So let's do something else. No worries at all. But on that note, I don't have much more to say about the show at the minute, other than I'd love to open the floor to you to give some closing remarks about the current era and how you feel.
Yeah, so I think my only, my remarks, I sort of laid throughout, which is, yes, there are people doing gatekeeping. Yes, there are people doing, sexist, misogynistic, transphobic, homophobic, but they are a very, very small minority, as is evidenced from whenever the main page posts anything on Facebook, the actual negative reacts are very, very, very small. So I love the current era. Not everybody loves the current era. Take a leaf out of the Doctor's book. Be kind to those who do.
Yeah.
Your show may not be being made for you at the minute, and that's fine, because the next era maybe for you. And nobody's taking away
the time it was.
What came before from you. And like I said, I will never sit there and mock other people's favourite eras, even if they're not mine. I can say I didn't connect with that, but hey, there's lots of things that people don't connect with. There's a lot of speculation she's going to leave. I said at the start, if she gets 3 and out, I'll be happy. I desperately wanted her to get her, what by human standards is now considered a full run. You know, she's gonna get it. Even if she does, as is speculated, I hope she doesn't. I hope she. I would love for the 60th to be Jodie's regeneration story. You know, if it's not, you know, if she does a couple of specials next year, at the end of this run, as is speculated, and that's it. You know, then I'll take it. Because it'll mean that, you know, she's on a run, and that's great. And hopefully, I will like whoever takes the role next. If I don't,
it's okay.
Wait for the wheel.
Yeah, 100%. You can't like 100% of a show that constantly changes. You're gonna have the bits that are yours. You're gonna have the bits that are someone else. Again, this is gonna make me unpopular on camera, but I was never a fan of the 10th Doctor. But I know that he is the most beloved Doctor, and there's a reason for that, you know. Absolutely. And again, this is a show about opinions, and I'm glad that I've been able to get yours. So, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Great stuff. There we go.